There's one money mistake that costs regular people more than any market crash or bad stock pick ever will. And the strangest part? Almost nobody even notices they're doing it. Because it doesn't feel like a mistake, it feels responsible. You tell yourself you'll start once the credit card's cleared, once the raise comes through, once things settle down a little. All very reasonable. So you wait, and most people end up starting a good decade later than they actually could have. Doesn't sound like much, right? But that one delay, just being a little late, can cost you north of $500,000. And it's not because they earned more or picked better stocks. Same salary, same boring index fund, same everything. The only thing different was the day they started. Now, I want to be straight with you. This isn't a just start early, you got this pep talk. It's closer to plain math than motivation. Kind of dry and mechanical, actually. Because compounding really only cares about one thing. It doesn't care how clever you are or how much you make, it cares about time. That's it, just time. You can't be clever enough to get around it. You just have to start sooner than feels necessary, and then leave it alone. So, what's actually going on under the hood? You put $1 in, it earns a little. Next year, that little bit earns its own little bit. Then that earns too. Your gains slowly start throwing off gains of their own. It's a snowball. Up at the top of the hill, it's so slow, so small, that it's easy to give up before it ever gets interesting. But let it roll for a few decades, and your money stops climbing in a straight line. It bends. Slow at first, then near the very end, it goes almost vertical. And that steep part at the end is where nearly all the money actually gets made, which you only reach if you stuck around long enough to get there. Put $1,000 in at 8%, and year one earns you a whole $80. Big whoop. But leave that same untouched thousand alone for 30 years, and it turns into more than 10 grand, and you never added another cent. And this is the part that trips almost everybody up. The years doing the real heavy lifting aren't the early ones you're grinding through right now. They're the ones way out in the future, the very years people give up on when they decide to wait. So, quick roadmap. I'm going to show you a couple of things that genuinely surprised me the first time I ran the numbers. What waiting actually costs you. A real number, not a vibe. Then the weird one. How somebody who invests for only 10 years can beat somebody who invests for 30. And under all of it, the single change that tips the whole thing back in your favor. Let's start with that first number, because it stings a little. Okay, picture two people. Same job, same paycheck, same plain old index fund. They each put in $300 a month. Call it $10 a day, basically a lunch, into a fund earning around 8% a year, which is roughly what the market's done over the long haul. Neither one's some genius stock picker. They just buy the whole market and forget about it. The only real difference is where they start. One kicks off at 25 and keeps going till 65. The other means well, gets busy, life happens, and doesn't start until 35. 10 years later. Watch what that head start does here. By the time they retire, the early one's sitting on just over $1 million. The late one, same monthly amount, same fund, nothing different except those 10 years at the start, ends up with less than half of that. So the head start, all on its own, was worth somewhere around 600 grand. And that's not a typo or some trick of the chart. It's just that the steepest part of the curve sits right at the end, in the years the late starter simply wasn't in the market for. And the frustrating thing? The late starter didn't do anything wrong. Same money every single month, 30 years straight. They were just a little slow off the line. They didn't lose to the market, they lost to the calendar. And the calendar never warns you, it just hands you the bill at the very end, when there's no time left to do anything about it. Now, this next part kind of breaks your brain the first time you see it. Forget starting late for a second. I want to show you what happens when you start early and then basically just stop. So, two more people. One invests $300 a month from 25 to 35 and then quits completely. Never adds another dollar. The other waits, starts at 35, and then invests $300 a month all the way to retirement without missing a beat. So the second person puts in 3 times as much of their own money. 30 years of paying in against 10, and they still lose. The one who quit after a decade comes out ahead because that early money got a whole extra 10 years to compound before the other person even started. Sit with that a second. The time mattered more than the money did, which is exactly why, I'll just invest more later once I'm earning more, is one of the most expensive things you can tell yourself. Money you invest later is just weaker money. It's got less runway. The money you put in during your 20s has 40 years to grow. Put that same money in during your 50s, and it's got maybe 10. Same dollars, completely different endings. So every year you put it off, you're not skipping some little deposit. You're deleting your single most powerful year, the one way out at the end of the curve where the snowball's biggest. And there's no future version of you that gets to come back and buy this decade over again. Alright, good news. The fix here is boring. Almost disappointingly boring. There's no secret fund, no perfect moment to jump in, no spreadsheet you have to babysit. It comes down to 3 small moves. Automate it. You set up one transfer for the day after payday, straight into a low-cost index fund, and then you never touch it again. Money you never see, you never really miss, and you only make the decision one time. A busy month can't turn into a skipped year if the whole thing just runs on its own. And that low-cost index fund? Kind of the perfect default. You own a tiny slice of thousands of companies at once for almost nothing in fees. No stock picking, no timing the market. You buy the whole thing and let the years do the heavy lifting. Then start small. Small enough it almost feels pointless. Don't sit around waiting until you can do it properly. Even $50 a month, starting today, grows into about $175,000 over 40 years. The amount matters way less than the start date. What you're really buying is time, and that's the one thing you can't circle back and pick up later, at any price. And then, sitting under both of those, the quiet one that does a shocking amount of work. Every time you get a raise, send a little slice of it into that transfer before lifestyle creep gets its hands on it. Even a quarter of each raise does it. You won't even miss it because it was never really in your paycheck to begin with. Do those small things, and that curve you've been staring at all video finally flips. It stops working against you and starts working for you. In the background, without you thinking about it at all. So if you take nothing else from this whole video, take this. Waiting costs real money. Hundreds of thousands of it. Not someday, not in theory. Starting early beats starting bigger almost every time. And the whole fix is one automatic transfer you can set up this week in about 10 minutes. You don't have to time the market. You don't need the perfect fund or a bigger salary first. You just have to start the clock. Because in the end, it's the clock doing the work, not you being clever. The most expensive day to start investing was a decade ago. The second best is today. So that's the idea. Quiet, a little boring, and it actually works. If it helped, subscribe, and the next one will find you. Until then, boring on purpose, rich on purpose.